What's the second passage? The second passage says this: we can know the truth whether we have rational arguments or not. And the third passage, again from the same page, says, even though we are given no good reason to believe and many persuasive reasons to disbelieve, even then the disbeliever has no excuse, because the ultimate reason he does not believe is that he has rejected deliberately God's Holy Spirit.
So according to this reasoning, Christians are right regardless of the evidence. Even if there's no evidence of theism, you should still believe, because the truth of Yahweh's existence is being magically beamed into everyone's mind, and atheists don't believe simply because they have rejected that truth. Probably because they are nasty, evil people who just want to sin. That pretty much sums up Craig's philosophy.
Now it seems to me, if you take those three passages seriously, then Dr. Craig must think that we are wasting our time tonight. Because tonight I thought we were inquiring into the question, what reasons are there for believing in God? Dr. Craig's position, however, seems to be that it doesn't matter whether there are reasons. We don't have to think that there are any rational arguments for believing in God. And somebody who is persuaded by reason, somebody who's persuaded by the evidence, even he has got it wrong. So I very much hope Dr. Craig will be able to tell us later on tonight why he thinks we're not all wasting our time being here.
People who think that Craig is engaging in serious philosophical discourse really are wasting their time. When debating with Craig, you ought to know that he is engaging in evangelism, not philosophy, and not real debate. I love Ahmed's criticism of the fine-tuning argument. Essentially, he argues that Craig is wrong to assume that the fact that there are other conceivable constants means that there are other probable constants. If all the other conceivable constants the universe could have were just as probable as the constants it does have, then a universe with the constants that this universe has would be improbable. The problem is that we just don't know that these other conceivable constants are just as probable as the ones our universe actually has.
What I want to know in answer to that question is where on earth he gets these probabilities from. Where on earth the idea comes from that it's incredibly unlikely that we should live in a life-permitting universe. Imagine somebody tossing a coin and it lands heads. And I say, wow, that's amazing. It must have been fixed. It was incredibly unlikely to land heads. Now, that's absurd. You say, why? And I say, well, there's millions of things it could have done. It could have landed on its side. It could have gone up into space and never come back. It could have turned into an elephant. It could have just vanished. There's millions of things it could have done, so it's millions and millions to one that it landed heads. Now, that would be really stupid. But what I'm saying is that I've plucked the probabilities out of thin air in that case, and I say Dr. Craig has plucked these probabilities out of thin air in this case.
And Ahmed really takes Craig to task on the moral argument.
In any case, what reason is there for thinking there are objective moral values? There must be a good argument for this. After all, there are no objective aesthetic values, quite plausibly, so Dr. Craig must give us an argument for saying there are objective moral ones. What is the argument? Well, it was striking, so I wrote it down. He said, there are objective moral values because deep down we know there are. That's it. That's the argument. Now, that may pass for an argument in Talbot Theological College. It may indeed pass for an argument in the White House. But, but this is Cambridge, and it doesn't pass for an argument here.
Hi-oh! Zing! Craig argued that we have as much of a reason to believe that objective moral values exist as we have to believe that objective objects exist. But Dr. Ahmed makes a great point. Do we have more of a reason to believe that objective moral values exist than we have to believe that objective aesthetic values exist? If so, what would those reasons be? I don't think Craig ever really gives an argument for objective morality. At times he has argued that objective moral values exist because a God exists, but this argument isn't going to convince anyone who is neither convinced of a God's existence nor convinced of the existence of objective morality. And here is Dr. Ahmed's response to the pseudo-argument from experience.
Now, the last argument Dr. Craig gives, he actually admits is not an argument at all. This is the argument, so-called argument, from experience. I'll just give an analogy for that. Suppose that you saw a donkey appearing on stage right here, okay? Well, that would be rather strange, but you might say, okay, well, maybe there's a donkey. But now suppose that the person next to you said, oh no, it isn't a donkey, it's a pig. And suppose there are lots of other people in the corner who said, no, it's a horse. And so suppose there's a whole lot of people over here who said they saw nothing at all. Now, in that case, I think you would be pretty sensible to doubt your experience. You would be pretty sensible to think, well, actually, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not really seeing a donkey.
Craig seems to be arguing that personal religious experiences trump any and all publicly and empirically available evidence. I strongly suspect that Craig is unwilling to even entertain the possibility that his religious experiences could be explained by naturalistic, non-supernatural, psychological, or neurological phenomena. This is unreasonable.